Welcome to the Restoring Our City podcast. My name is Jobin, and I am with my fellow colleague, co-host, brother, partner in crime, Jeswin Thomas.
What up, what up?
Man, it's been a while.
I don't even know how long it's been. I feel like it's been over a year, but you know what? We're back. We're back.
Yes, we are back, and glad to just jump back on because I think it's been a good break for us to not record. And I think, you know what? There's a lot of content out there and even content creators, and this goes against every rule book, right? You should post every single day. You want to grow your following. If you don't post every day, you're going to lose everybody. And like, that's not really the name of the game, right? Like, that's not why we're in it. I think we're in it to build community. And one of the things that needs to happen when you're trying to build community is to be a part of one. And I think we've been talking about just finding our own spaces, and I'm glad that we've done that. So it's so good to be back. I know we're in different states. If you first time you're listening, I am in Dallas, Texas. My buddy Jeswin is in Chicago.
Yes, sir.
How is life going for you, buddy? And what have you been up to?
Yeah, you know, we didn't take a break and did nothing. We have been super busy. So if you've listened to us before, I was in school the last time we recorded something. So I just finished up my master's at Moody. We bought a new place, so this background looks a little bit different if you're watching us on YouTube. So I'm still getting set up here, and we have a dog who may or may not make an appearance on the pod.
Right. If you hear clawing, it's not, you're not like hiding people in a closet or something. It's your dog. So that's good to know. And we haven't really deviated completely off the gospel, but we do care about people. And you're taking care of another living creature. Who I've met. A wonderful dog. Even though I'm allergic to dogs, it attacked me the first time I saw it in a lovingly way, the most lovingly way possible.
You know what? You're going to react to it one way or another, either through allergies or you're going to fall in love with that. So we'll figure out which one.
Exactly. But man, that's really exciting. Those are all really big life moments. Finishing seminary.
Yeah.
Buying a place.
Yep.
Getting a dog. That's a lot.
Yep.
But
How about you guys? Did you get a dog yet down in Dallas?
No, we will not get
truck?
a dog. No.
Did you get a ranch?
No. I was tempted to buy a cowboy hat. We went to Fort Worth once, and I was like, I'm just going to immerse myself into the lifestyle. But no big belt buckle, nothing like that yet. But before you talk about me, I do want to, you're a little modest. Finish seminary. That's a huge deal, man. Like,
thank you.
What was the hardest? Can we do this conversation in Greek?
You know, that's why I didn't finish the MDiv, right? I didn't get into languages, so we're still speaking English. Okay. Maybe a little bit of KJV, but it's okay. It's okay. Be thou thus. Actually, Jobin could attest to this. If you know my dad, he prays in the KJV, so he will legit break out Old English for biblical stuff. So that's a shout out to him.
That is actually a really great description of your dad. I should just call him like King James. That's awesome, and congratulations, man. I know thank you. It's been a pretty long journey, but glad to see that you have that knowledge, and you put it to good use because you guys are doing a young adults small group at your church, right?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of speaking through life a little bit. I think one of the things we're going to be diving into on this podcast is about mentorship, right? And the reasons why it is so important in our life. Part of that is really discovering purpose. You know, a few years ago, when we had just gotten married, I felt a really big burden to study God's word. There was a sense that, hey, he might be leading us into something. We didn't know what that something is, to be honest. We still don't know what that something is. But we know that the place that we're exploring that something is here in Chicago. So, you know, we debated almost for a year, and we prayed about it. And there was thoughts that we might pick up and move, but we really decided, hey, the community that we're part of and the mentors that we have in our life and the places where we can serve and discover our own purpose and calling are all here in Chicago, and that would not be possible, and that discernment wouldn't even be there unless we had people in our life that really showed us that, hey, God has placed you here for a reason. And it's been awesome, Job, and like this has been a great season. I feel like it's going to be a great few years in Chicago. We still want to move at some point, but you know what? This is the place where we're meant to be. And I think mentorship has a lot to do with discovering our purpose.
Yeah, that's a really well said. And I think being plugged in, being part of a healthy community. We talk about community a lot, and it's like the buzzword. I've seen a lot of these Instagram reels. I think you even sent me one the other day where you get every single like mega church has the same message. Do life together with us. Let's do life together. Hey guys, let's do life together. What does that mean? Like, you hardly know. What does life mean, right? Like, we're all family.
Oh man, and then the other one that really popped up was circles are better than rows. I've seen these like circles are better than rows. Circles are better. What does that even mean, right? Like a circle is just a line that's in a circle, right? Like, what do you want to do in the circle? How is a circle actually going to help you? I think is stuff that we should talk about a little bit more. But it's buzzwords all around.
I missed your math quips. So I think, you know what? I think conceptually, I understand what they're talking about from life groups instead of just going to church and sitting in a pew, going in and out. I get the concept. But a lot of times the terminology of church, especially like big churches and even just any kind of community. Hey, like you go to work, you go to try to apply for a new job and says, hey, we're like family here. Are we? Like, are we really like family? Have you met my family? It's
not
one of those
send
things.
Your employment docs, right?
Exactly.
We'll fire you, but if you want to leave, just give us 2 weeks notice.
Right, exactly. But I think a lot of people use these words in hyperbole, and it's just really not grounded in real truth, to be honest.
Yeah.
And sometimes like churches do that, and they'll say, hey, let's do a small group, and we do a small group, and it's like a couple course semester, and they're in and out of your life, never to be heard of again.
Yeah.
I think we have to like break down a lot of what community means, and that's why we've been really passionate about it. I think that's been kind of the theme of Restoring Our City for a long time, is connecting community. And if you ever asked me how we've done that, and it's not just we did a fundraiser here, we did a podcast episode on that's not really connecting community. It's those heavy hitting conversations that you've had with one-on-one people in the crux of their life where they had to make a key decision, right? And like somebody's there for you. How do we get to that? I think some of us have been figuring it out. I know in this break, we've been trying to figure out what church we want to go to. We know we wanted to, be a place in our neighborhood to have people over and host small group and do life together, really, but truly, right? It's been cool to see that.
You guys sit in a circle, or are you guys sitting in a row?
No, it's a rectangle. We have this new table.
Rectangle, all right.
We are sitting in a rectangle.
Yeah. How's that been going, though? How's finding community down in Dallas?
It's awesome. It's, maybe I brought it up before, but like where we bought our house, there's so many great families and people in the same stage of life as us. We've got 2 small kids, and we're part of a new church. A lot of folks have church hopped, and we all live within a certain mile radius, and there's really great couples and families that we've met. It's been awesome to see that. And we've found our church, and there's been really like God moments to point us to say, hey, this is probably the right place for you. And so now we've been serving for a little bit too. And it's been really cool. And I think that's awesome, we needed community before we talk about community, right?
Yeah.
Not that we're completely there yet and it's this perfect thing, but like, hey, let's at least make the attempt. Let's start to put the effort into search out and build it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of where we've been. And that's probably why we've taken a little bit of a break from the pod. I think that's a good thing, right? Like, can't just make content to make content, but let's actually live this stuff out. That's why we want to record it and share it. Because for those of you who might be struggling with finding the sense of these things, we just wanted to share some of the things that we found along our journey to help you find that type of community, right? So what made, maybe I'll ask you, Jeswin, like in this break and this journey to even lead a young adults group, what made it feel right? What were some of those things where you felt like, hey, this is where I am meant to be?
Yeah. So to be honest, a lot of it has to do with just the community of believers and pastors we have at the church that we go to here in Chicago called City Line. Even our student ministry pastor, our family pastor, and even our senior pastor who's been mentoring me, all had a sense that, hey, we feel like you and my wife, Stephanie, who had expressed a lot of interest in serving the college and young adults, would be the right couple to sort of head up this space. And for us, we're in a season of still discerning our calling. I thought by the time I'd finished, finishing my master's in Moody, God would have given a very clear direction of going into ministry in some way, shape, or form. And to be honest, I don't have that. And I never rushed into finding that. And I'm okay with taking the time to get there. And in fact, I just took a new job last week, and all that are really good things, right? Like not to rush anything. But I believe there's a pastor, his name is Pastor Jason James. He's out in the New York area. And he said, well, are you going to do ministry, or are you ministering as you go? And it's one of those phrases that stuck in my mind, because even as we're going and as we're discovering, the reason why we jumped into this young adults ministry partly was because there was affirmation from others that, this is a good place to discover your calling. It gives you opportunities to work together as a team, to speak, to host, to discover in a way that's undergirded by the church, that provides us a lot of mentorship and allows us to mentor others. And we just found a good sense of calling there. And in fact, it helped us reorient our life at the moment. We made the decision to buy our house strategically, to be close to church and be able to host things here, but also to remain in the community that we're part of, because a lot of what we prayed for in our early days of marriage was to be surrounded by people that could give us advice and really lead us into this next season. And he provided us all of those things. And so therefore, why would we be so quick to pick up and move? So we decided to slow down and wait. And so we are here in Chicago for the foreseeable future. So if you're around the area and want to connect, let me know.
There you go. Nice plug that you slid right in there. I noticed that. Location. I think that's huge. That's an attribute, I think, of finding community. It's almost like built into the word, right? When we talk about our communities, we think about our neighborhood or people in close proximity. But a lot of times when we talk about church hopping, or even, I think we think about that in the Christian sense of finding my community, but even just finding your peers. Like, where are you right now? Who is around you? Who are the influences that are speaking the most into your life? Like, what's your location right now? Not just physically in your neighborhood, but like, what's your place on the map, and who's actually around you, right?
Yeah.
That's huge.
As you were talking about that, I couldn't help but think of sometimes, in our own life, we look at past seasons and past communities that we've been part of, thinking, oh man, it was so great. When we were growing up, Jobin and I grew up in the same church, and it was great. We'd play basketball on Sundays. I was probably sleeping over at their house. I don't know, probably like 50% of every single weekend. Way too much. That was beautiful. We bonded over 2K, and it was great. Great times growing up. But sometimes we could look back so fondly on that and think, oh my gosh, like it was just back there in the day. There is something to that. But like you said, looking at where you're at right now and who's around you, and how do you sort of maximize your ministry in that situation. I always think of Paul, right? Like, what if he was like, oh my gosh, what if he's chilling in Thessalonica and it's like, oh my gosh, if I was just with the Corinthians, these losers out here screwing things up, it was so much better, right? Like, no, he went to each community, built it out. There's these beautiful ending of his epistles where there's sadness as he's leaving each place, because he maximized those relationships where he was at the moment before he moved on to the next place God called him to be.
Wow, that's a great. I love how you just drop all your seminary knowledge in this episode. Guess what, guys? Let me pull out a Thessalonica reference. But no, that's cool, because you think about the locations that Paul has been on his journey, and a lot of our Bibles have like 4 or 5 maps in the back of it, right? And you see
that's so true.
What he's done, like. And that's intentional, right? Like to go into a place and establish something there. And like you are in a place right now, and to buy a place as well.
Yeah.
Huge decision, right? And so to think, I love the way that you even phrase that. You're buying a place with the intent of being there and serving, not just, hey, this was the right price point, right?
Yeah.
So that's actually kind of interesting, where the church that we go to, North Place, and it's in the East Dallas area, if anybody's around. It's a half a mile away from my house. And that made it like a super easy decision. But there are so many places that you can go to church, and that we have friends and relationships in, might actually make it easier to plug in, to be honest. But at the same point, we wanted to go to a place where my kids would go to school with other kids at that church, and like they might work with them, or we might work with them in the same industries or the same school districts, or go to parent teacher conference, and you might find somebody who goes to your church. Like, those are some things that we wanted to make sure was part of our decision making process. It's not the only thing, but it's one of those things I think gets often overlooked in terms of like community. So
absolutely,
we've been on a journey. trying to figure out our own communities before we talk to you about like what community means to us. And I think it's really important because once you find it, you can thrive, right?
100%. 100%.
Everybody's a part of a community in some sense, right? Unless you're completely alone, which I think is a problem in today's society. But what makes a thriving community versus just, hey, I'm just going through the motions?
That's an excellent question, and I think part of the thriving community is almost the investment of the people. There's always that stat where 80% of the work gets done by 20% of the people, something along those lines, right? I think it's so easy for us to often just go to a larger communal gathering, whether it's church or even at work, just show up, go through the motions and leave. There is no real investment from our part to really get things out of it, right? So I think that is part of it, right? How much are we willing to invest really helps with not just helping the community thrive, but also helping us thrive. We're not meant to discover who we are in a vacuum. And I think part of why, Jobin and myself really emphasize not just being part of community, but really helping invest in communities because we see that we thrive ourselves from that. Actually, I take it back. Yeah. I'm not going to talk for you. Maybe you're not thriving, but I think you are. Hopefully you are.
Yeah, I think you're spot on because like if you're in a healthy community, it's investing into you and then hopefully you're investing into other people. I think that's the whole goal of these conversations and kind of this new focus. You're going to hear a lot of us talk about not just community. Everybody talks about that kind of stuff, right? Like I think it's way too generic, but how do you be part of a thriving one? And then how can we, Jeswin and Jobin and everybody else listening, we want to make this collective. How do we help you thrive? And if we need to get on a call and you need to get onto our calendars, I've heard so many like listeners have messaged me and be like, hey, when's the pod coming back? Or, hey, can you be my mentor? Or we need to find a mentor. I think just we want to truly connect community, not just talk about it, but we actually want to connect you. You mentioned the 80-20 principle. It's a pretty famous book. And there's sections in that book, and I'm just looking at some of my notes where, you want to have some of those mentors in your life who are kind of at this level above you to help guide you. And I don't think a lot of people have that. And I think when you're trying to find some of those people, this book was talking about finding 6 or 7 professional relationships. And those relationships really have to be dictated into a couple categories, like find 1 or 2 connections with somebody you admire. Find up to 3 relationships with reliable peers, people alongside you, and then finding 1 or 2 people that you will actually pour into.
That's
you
good.
Think about all of those relationships and different hierarchies. That's investment into yourself as well into other people. If we were all doing that, think about what kind of community that would be, right? Instead of just like, I'm going to some place to get fed and I'm take, and it's not this cycle. A circle, not a row.
What's interesting, though, is, and I'm thinking to even our own past podcast episodes, and I feel like there's just a conversation we often have with people we grew up with, and especially those, within the South Asian and Indian communities, where we talk about how much our community isn't thriving or how much our community, we're walking away with church hurt or we're kind of processing past experiences. And it doesn't seem like what you just talked about is a normative thing. And so, part of the question, I guess I'm trying to think through right now is, do you like why do you think that is? What I'm trying to get to the root of why aren't we thriving as we ought to? And we know we're sort of scratching the surface on why do we think that mentorship and these being part of community investing is really good. But part of the reason we're talking about that is we're not seeing that as sort of the norm from before. So I don't even know how to formulate that question. Why do we think that is the case?
I hear you. And here's a couple things that I've thought of during this break. Okay. One, I think a lot of people who do have podcast equipment probably need to return it. Maybe sometimes us included, but I hear a lot of people, I'm joking, right? I hear a lot of people talk about the problems and then there's nothing done behind it. And that's why I was really wanted to make sure that I was part of a community doing something to try to serve my community. It's not that it's this big thing, like you have this massive audience or millions of, who cares? But are you doing something?
Yeah.
And that's my second point. It's like we talk about things too much. That's one. But the second thing is we're not doing enough. And sometimes it's laziness. It's the willingness to sacrifice. We don't have that, right? Like we don't have you got to host people. You got to like clean up your house. You got to like have snacks out. And, we've got 2 little kids. I remember when you were part of our small group when we were in Chicago before my son was born. He was our first kid, obviously. And we were new parents, did not know what we were doing. But that was like the same time that like at our church, we decided to be small group leaders. And practically speaking, it was the worst time to do that because we just had a kid. Literally, like, I think my son was just a few weeks old. And I'm like leaving my wife to be like, hey, I got to go Wednesday night, got to do small group. Or we even had it at our place, sleep deprived. And I look back at it now very fondly because and I was really excited. I think that was the most energized I've been all week when I was sleep deprived, but like I was excited because it was small group because I know that's my calling. Like, it's not to host a podcast. It's to really lead small groups, to be honest. But I think that's to answer your question in a long-winded way. People are not willing to take the sacrifice to pour into other people. There's that level of relationship that's missing. We need to get to that.
Yeah. That's completely valid. 100% too. And I know we'll probably go into future episodes of what that does for others, but even in my own life, I mean, I know our church was going through some stuff back in the day, but we talk about it a lot on this podcast. The reason why I stayed around is the relationships that I had within that small group. And it was just an incredible season. And that was the season before I got married. And it was just an amazing time. There was nothing that I looked forward to more, especially. That
sounds so bad. It's like right before I got married. That was an amazing time.
No, but honestly, like you think about, a church that's somewhat going through a crisis. And at the same time, I'm thinking about, preparing myself for marriage and like a wedding. And I just realized that no matter what's happening around me, this group of people that I'm committed to right here, right now, which you were leading, was what I look forward to the most on a Wednesday during a global pandemic. It just coming and breaking open the word together. And we grew a ton. We grew a ton. And I know in future episodes, we'll get into some of that personal growth and what it really does for us. But I totally hear you on that.
Yeah, I think going back to the why, it's like, community is great. And the people who ask me, hey, have you ever been part of a community like it talks about in the Bible, like a healthy community, something that really strives? I could say I've had glimpses of it. I've been part of those great groups. There's lots of different collections of people that really lived that out. And I noticed it was because there was this cycle of people pouring into us and we were pouring into other people, but it wasn't just like this one person doing it. There was a really healthy cycle of it. And we want that for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. Like, not that we can just do it for you and we're saying, hey, I will mentor you and meet with you every week. Some of you, maybe we can. But if we can't, let's find that person for you, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you listen to this podcast in like several seasons, there's so many great leaders in our community. I think that's the thing that we need to highlight that's really unique about us as South Asians too. Like community family is really important. But then guess what, guys? There are some people in your industries. It's not just church stuff. It's business. It's food. It's fashion. It's music. It's so many things that there are really great influences in that could probably help you thrive, not just survive.
We joked about it on a previous podcast and if you're out there and you want to do this, we will help you 100%. I would love to see a podcast where you throw 2 random Indians together and see how long it takes before they knew someone mutual. Honestly, like if you throw our parents in the same room, exactly, shortest podcast. We always joke about that, but if you throw our parents in a room, within 10 minutes, I was like, oh my gosh, like this person's cat's niece, and that was my uncle's monkey, right? Like, it's great. And you would find that connection so quickly. And that's the thing about our community.
If you found that connection, that would be a scientific breakthrough, Jasmine. not some lineage like next version of 23andMe. It's with
this is why
your
I
pets.
studied theology and not biology. But anyway, I digress. It's the fact that it's funny because we are known for finding that connection so quickly, and yet somehow it's missing within when we want to find that mentorship, when we want to find people that help us thrive. It's there for sort of that personal connection, or finding out what church you grew up in or what town you are from in India. But when it comes to like, hey, how do we leverage that for a thriving community all around? It seems to be missing, but that's something that, that's a space we want to occupy. That's something that we want to do. Yeah,
that makes us kind of unique. And I'm sure other cultures have this too, but the Brown community, man, like we had my son's 5th birthday party, and we had people from our church and our friends and lots of different people, family, and all walks of life. Everybody's from different states. Some people who never met each other before, but like within seconds, right? It's like, oh, you're from New York? Oh, yeah, so am I. Yeah. Do you know so-and-so? Oh my gosh, so do I. I grew up. There's like 1 degree of separation between strangers.
Yeah.
But think about how we can make that valuable, right? Like to somebody listening to this, and you're probably in real estate, or you're in entrepreneurship, and you're trying to kick something off, right? And you're like, man, I really wish somebody can pour into me.
Yeah.
We probably know somebody who can pour into you. And I think
100%.
For the leaders on the flip side, right? Like when we talk about these types of relationships, you want to find somebody who can pour into you. That's great. For those of us, and I think you and I, in our seasons of life and the experiences that we've had, we can pour into other people too. And I think that switch that we got to flip on to say, hey, I have something valuable I can give to someone else. If that's a 15-minute conversation weekly, I've done that professionally in my work experience. It's been amazing. I want to just kind of switch gears there. Maybe let's take it out of the church world, but like professionally too. Like you've had mentors in your life, and it could be church related or not. Like how valuable has it been to have somebody speak into your life?
Yeah, it's not just, it's more than I can even describe. I think, we were listening to our sermon today about Jesus sort of, part of the sermon was about how he calls his disciples. And there is something about someone that you respect, someone that you see as an expert, someone that is someone that you want to emulate. When they call something in you and say, hey, Jess, when I see that you can do this, I do see that there is a spiritual gift within you. I do see that, hey, you shouldn't just be, a senior level analyst. I think you could be a really good people leader. It does something within you where, and especially within me, where it says, oh my gosh, maybe I can do that, right? I didn't have the imagination for that for myself, but someone saw something in me that I didn't even see in my stage right now. And it's changed so much in my own life, as well, career-wise, and also, within the church realm. And so it's more than I can say. It's helping me become who, God in some ways is meant for me to be, but I couldn't get there without the people that he placed in my path.
Right.
I don't know if you have a similar story there.
No, I think what you're saying is really important. I don't want people to miss that, because they're speaking something into you, something valuable, and it's probably things within your blind spot that you don't notice. It's a different set of eyes, a different perspective. People who are not like in their own thoughts. You're in your own thoughts, seeing your life in this almost tunnel vision view. And now you've got somebody else. The fact that we don't have that in almost every area, I'm trying to look for that all the time. I mean, shout out to Pastor Nate, who I could think of very critical phases of my life, like relationships and job wise, even trying to buy my first place. He was like walking me through so many things. And I'm like, man, I think about all the people who don't have something like this, right?
Yeah.
And somebody to pour into them. Now, like professionally speaking, I've got 3 different mentors in all different like levels, and they give me like really great advice and really practical things. And the one thing I see in common after every conversation when we're about to wrap up, they always say, hey man, this has been really great. Like this is the conversation I look forward to the most during the week. Outside of all my crazy meetings, outside of all the work that I have to do, I love this stuff, because they love pouring into somebody else and seeing someone grow. for everybody listening, you probably have expertise in something you could contribute. That's where we want to connect our community, right? Like we've got podcasts with really great folks, really great leaders in their spaces. You can hear their stories, you can listen, and you can digest. But like, what if you actually connected with somebody on a one-on-one basis and they gave you their perspective into your life?
Yeah.
That's going to be super valuable. We just want everybody to kind of experience that, right?
Yeah. And I think, just like you said, we want everyone to experience that. And in the pause that we've taken, Jobin and I have had a lot of conversations on how can we really make that phrase that we always say, connecting our community, more of a reality. What does it look like to go beyond just a podcast? And it's something that we're still definitely dreaming about, but we want to take some practical steps in even doing that right now. So part of that vision involves, hey, if you want to connect with someone and if you want to connect with ourselves, you can go right now to the Restoring Our City website, and right on the front page, there is a Get Connected button. If you click that button and fill out your contact information, I promise you, we will help you either be mentored or find someone that can mentor you. We want to put our skin in this game and get behind what we're trying to say and go beyond just a podcast. We want to see a thriving community. And so, that's why we're here and that's why we want to exist.
Yeah, I think well said. And we definitely want to support that journey for you. So if that's even us, like you hear this and you're like, wow, I'd love to just get some advice. And maybe it's a short-term kind of thing, or you say, hey, I would love to connect with you monthly or weekly. We'll talk out the logistics, but the idea of saying, hey, I actually need this. And maybe there might be personal things, there might be professional things that we can maybe connect you to. We're not trying to recreate LinkedIn here, guys, but like it's one of those things where in the South Asian community, we have a strength of networking and knowing people and connecting people. And I think both sides of that community aspect, like let's raise our hand to find those mentors. And then also on the flip side, raise your hand to be a mentor, right? To actually get connected. If there's anything that's in the commission, the Great Commission is like, go out there and make disciples, right? Like it's one of those things. Maybe you work your way up to like true like mentorship in that sense, but like just put yourself out there. It's been super valuable to us, and we've had those relationships, and we've also exhibited that for others. I think about Restoring Our City. It started in 2005. Next year will be 20 years. And like, I think a lot of times I feel inadequate. And maybe we've talked about imposter syndrome and all this kind of stuff, or, when you first get married and then like somebody asks you to give out marital advice. It's like, well, I've been married for like 6 months. I don't really feel adequate to give out marital advice, but we've almost been married. It's going to be 10 years next year. It's crazy to think about that. A decade, right? I still don't feel comfortable giving out marriage. I don't know if I'm doing it right, but there's something about having whatever you have, be willing to give, right? Like be willing to impart it into somebody else. And I think our community can do it really well. We just want to help be the catalyst for that, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think there are definitely pockets that are doing it excellently. I mean, even for myself, Jobin, you've been an incredible mentor to me, especially during some super rough seasons. And for us now, it's how do we multiply that? How do we see not just individuals in pockets thrive, but how do we see an entire community thrive? So just like you said, whether you want to be mentored or you want to mentor, definitely get connected. Go to the website, hit the link. We want to connect with you.
Yeah. And I've seen you replicate it too, Jess, when it's kind of crazy to think back over the years where I remember like, oh, I'm thinking about starting a small group. And I gave you a book once, and we keep talking about these principles of leadership. And one of them is replace yourself, right? And there's one of these things where we do want to replicate leadership and create more leaders. And let's just start the conversations, not just by listening to your audio on a podcast on your commute, but like actually raising your hand and trying to serve somebody else.
Absolutely.
Excited to dive into this. We want to highlight more mentors. So if you know some really great people who are doing this already too, bring them on. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it together, and let's continue to connect our community. Restoringourcity.org. check out the Get Connected button. You will see that. And then also make sure you hit that subscribe button. Excited to jump back on the pod and talking about mentorship and leadership and just community connection all over the place. So, Jessamyn, this has been fun. It's like riding a bike, right? So
yeah, like riding a bike. Let's do it again. And just not, a year from now.
Exactly. Cool. All right, guys. We will catch you on the next episode.